So this is a 4 the digital reader, and this is the final part of my Boox page review. The first part, I did an overview of the device. The second part, I looked at apps just to kind of show you what the apps would look like in the device. And this third part, I basically made it my daily driver for a couple weeks and just used it and read several books and several different apps so I could kind of get a feel for the device and really what it's like as a daily driver. So the first thing I've really noticed for me is that in going into the different apps, I kind of felt like the contrast on the Boox page is lighter than the big name e-readers, the Kobos, the Kindles, the Pocketbooks, the Nooks. So what I'm going to show you is the Kindle e-reader, show you what a page, just a normal average page from that of text looks like, and then what the Boox page, what a page from a book looks like without super tweaking the settings. And that was one thing that was an issue for me, is that when you went into the actual, when you went into an app like Hoopla or Kindle or something like that, when you went to read a book, I felt the contrast was a little light. And then if you dialed up the contrast, then once you left the book and went to the rest of the app, it was kind of dark. I'll show you what that looks like here. Is that, if I dial up the contrast in the book, then when I leave, the app is super dark. And then if I fix the contrast so the app looks decent, then when I go into the book in the app, then I feel like the contrast is a little dark. So that at first was kind of a pain point for me. It's just every time I went into an app, I was constantly changing the settings. I was constantly trying to find the right font and just getting everything just right to read. And that was frustrating, but after a while, I got used to it. And as I got more used to jumping in and out of the settings, then it wasn't as huge of an issue. But another big thing that I didn't like was it definitely feels like the interface was made for a tablet, but not an e-ink tablet. Because when you look at the interface, there is a lot of scrolling, there's a lot of slider bars, and scrolling and slider bars just do not work well with e-ink tablets because of the low refresh rate. Things that work well with e-ink tablets are buttons that you press. And they did have like press settings where you would press something and it would move a slider up or down. For example, a contrast setting might be 0 to 300. And they give you a slider, but because of the low refresh rate, the slider is really hard to get control of. They do give you the option to press plus and minus, but with 150 different settings, it's a huge pain to press, 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 press. So that was something that I had to get used to. Now, once I kind of made a decision as to whether I wanted the app to look good or the book to look good, and most of the time I chose the book, and it was just like, I don't care if the app looks crappy, I'll muddle through it, then the reading experience really wasn't that bad. I mean, the reading experience, I would say, was okay. It definitely didn't beat Kindle or Kobo or Pocketbook or Nook, but it was definitely good. And after you're reading for a while, you just kind of get into the flow of it, and it's not as much of an issue. But the things that were great about it was I felt like I always was leery of Android e-ink readers because of the battery life. I was very impressed with the battery life. I haven't drained it to 0 yet, and I've read 3 books in 3 different apps, and the battery life is low, but I would generally say if you're reading on this on the regular every day, then you'll probably be able to get a good week out of it before you have to charge it. It might be more. I'm going to do a a battery life reading challenge to really get my numbers exact, but I still was very impressed with the battery life. Very impressed with the versatility of it, where I could use all my reading apps. Not only could I use my reading apps, but I could also use my reading tracker. I could use the timer in my reading tracker. I really liked the versatility of it, and I really enjoyed the form factor. I'm a person who likes a little bit bigger e-reader. I like, a 7 or 8-inch e-reader. The size of this one was a little small for me as far as my hands, because I have bigger hands, but it was so thin and light that really was a plus. So I really liked the form factor, and I have to admit, once again, I was a little bit impressed with how the hardware performed. I definitely thought that it was going to be underpowered, and I was impressed with the button layout. I was impressed with, the speed of how all the apps moved as far as their snappiness. I still am not a huge fan of the refresh rate, but I was definitely impressed with how things had improved since I had used the Leaf a couple years ago. But now for the downsides. I talked about the interface. I just feel it's not made for e-ink readers. It's made for tablets, and the interface was always a pain to move, slide stuff, and scroll, because with the low refresh rate, it wasn't exact. Neo Reader was okay, but once again, Neo Reader was not a great e-reader, but the main reason I didn't like Neo Reader is, once again, navigating all the settings that were pretty much made for tablets, so a lot of sliding and scrolling. Neo Reader did have a much better contrast between the text and the background than the books I read in the actual apps. But as I mentioned in, my part 2 review, if you're getting a Boox page, you're probably not going to be getting it to use Neo Reader. I kind of felt like Neo Reader wasn't bad, but if I was primarily going to be using Neo Reader, I would get a Kindle, a Kobo, a Pocketbook, or a Nook, because they're just a much better experience to me than Neo Reader. Neo Reader gets the job done, but I just don't really see what I would use it for, when the main reason to get an Android e-reader is for the versatility and being able to jump between all your e-reading apps. I mean, if I had to sum it up, and I guess that's what this whole video is about, I feel like the Boox page, and I have a feeling the Go Color 7 also, are kind of like jack of all trades, master of none. It's a good e-reader, but it's not better than its main competition as far as e-reading. As far as being a tablet, I have to be honest, it's a crappy tablet. Because of the incredibly low refresh rate, it's just hard to get things done. And the way they built their interface, it really relies a lot on tablet-like navigation, which requires a decent refresh rate. I feel like if you get into an app and you spend the time tweaking your settings, and you make a decision between, I want the settings to be the best in the book part, or I want the settings to be the best in the app part, then you're going to be in good shape. And once I kind of made that decision, it was a pretty good experience, mainly because of just the versatility is really nice, where you can use your timer, you can jump into Barnes and Nobles, you can jump into Hoopla. But for me personally, it was a miss. Now, I think the Boox is best for somebody who uses Libby, who uses Hoopla, who has tried a whole bunch of different reading services, and they have remnants all over the web. They have some in Scribd, they have some in Barnes and Nobles, they have some in Kindle, they have some in Kobo. So they've tried a bunch of different ones and kind of moved around a bit and haven't really picked one that worked for them perfectly. and they haven't read all their purchases and they kind of just want to finish off the books and all their services. For somebody like that, this is a very good e-reader because you can get all of that done in one device. If it's somebody who wants the best e-reading experience, this device isn't for you. If you're somebody who wants the best tablet experience, this device isn't for you. For me, I'm a person who wants the best e-reading experience. And so I get an e-reader that's dedicated to e-reading and built for that. And as far as tablets, I want a good tablet experience, so I just use a tablet. I think the screen is a little too small, in my opinion, for manga, way too small for American comics, but everybody kind of is going to have their own feelings on that. I feel like I asked myself, would I send this device back or put it up on eBay? And I have to be honest, I like the device enough that I'm going to keep it, mainly because it is useful if you have to go into an app that you don't use often and that you don't want to buy a dedicated e-reader for that app. For example, I have a couple books in Barnes & Nobles. I'm not going to buy a Nook just to read those books. This is perfect for that. I like this device for Hoopla. It's not the best e-reading experience, but for Hoopla, it gets the job done. And I can't use Hoopla with any of my other e-readers, so this is the best reading experience for Hoopla. If you are a person who uses Libby, just get a Kobo. If you are a person who uses PDFs, there may be a bigger form factor of an e-ink, Android e-ink reader will work for you, but I think this is too small, or just get a tablet. For me, I'm still looking for that perfect device that has a high refresh rate and high readability, and that would be kind of the holy grail for me. So I'm going to hold on to this because, well, I'm a techie and I love tech, and I'm going to keep it for that. But also, if there is something that a book I left someplace in another service that is orphaned, then I can use this device. I can get in there. I can read that book without any type of eye strain for as long as I need to. But as far as my day-to-day daily driver, those are still going to be pure e-readers, and I'm just going to be putting EPUBs on them. So I would say if you're thinking about getting a Boox page, you really have to ask yourself what you're getting it for. If you're getting it so that you can read a whole bunch of orphaned content that you left in other services and you want to get in there, finish off that content, then I think it's a good device. If you're getting it because you're going to be using Neo Reader, then just get a dedicated e-reader. If you are getting it because you want to read manga or comics, I really would recommend that you get a tablet. And if you're getting this because you want to read Libby, get a Kobo. I think this is a good device if you want to read books using the Hoopla service, but not a lot of people use the Hoopla service. I think that if you're getting this because there are definitely apps out there for a lot of book publishers who have their own app, and when you buy a book, you have to read it in their app, then this is a great device for that. I hope this helps. I'll probably do these 3-part reviews again for other devices. Sorry for the sound, but it's the background sound, but it's the middle of the day and I live near a train, but I'm just going to try and, soldier on. So I think I like this 3-part format mainly because I like the overview, I like the apps, and I have another surprise device coming that I'm going to be showing in a little bit that I think might be the perfect fit for me, but we'll see when it comes. So this is Zofori, the digital reader, and keep reading.